Right, okay. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Simon Smith from the CFCI. Welcome to what I think is probably our 9th webinar now. And today we're going to have a virtual site visit talk on Downing Place URC. We're going to have a few speakers today, but also we've got quite a few panelists for the Q&A at the end of the talk. So as always, CFCI members, if you could please raise your questions in the Q&A tab on Zoom, and then what I'll do is at the end I'll host a Q&A session while I read out your questions for our panelists. So why don't we start proceedings? As I said, today's webinar is a virtual site visit of a project called Downing Place URC, and we're very lucky today to have a number of the project team with us. That includes Margaret, who's client representative from Downing Place URC, who, and I'm pleased to say, is also a CFCI member. We've got Dirk, Jack and Apost from Archangel Architects, or probably Archangel Architects. I've probably got that wrong, but perhaps I'll be corrected. And then we've got Stuart and Tom from Coulson, who are the contractors, the builders. And of course, you've got myself from the CFCI. I should also mention all these projects are a team approach, and I'm hoping in the audience somewhere we might have some people from the other consultants and people involved. So we've got the Bremner Partnership, Andrew Firebrace, David Bedwells, and 3C Shared Services. Okay, right. So we're gonna have a talk now. We're gonna hear from Margaret first, but we're also going to hear from the architect and the contractor. We're going to hear for about 45 minutes, and then we're going to try and reserve 10 or 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So, Jack, you're running the show. Do you want to turn on your presentation, and we'll let Margaret speak first.
Hello, everybody. On behalf of the church building group, I'll highlight 3 aims we've had in mind. The first is a large worship area. We wanted to open this existing area to more people and to consider flexible uses during the week, as well as Sundays. Second is our entrances. We wanted more welcoming spaces, again, both for the church and for weekday community use. And the third point is about sustainability. First, some background. The redevelopment of the Downing Place United Reformed Church was enabled by the uniting of 2 churches and the selling of one site, that of Emmanuel on Trumpington Street, to Pembroke College. This gave us both the people, and we have 200 members, and the funds to redevelop the other site, formerly St. Columba's, in Downing Place. Pembroke also allowed us to stay in the Emmanuel site for 2 years after the sale during the renovations. Now, Emmanuel already had the experience of removing the pews in 1991 so that the worship space could be used flexibly 7 days a week, including for weekly concerts. The Downing Place site, which Jack's very conveniently showing here, is opposite John Lewis and has a different community on its doorstep. In fact, it's right on the interface of the university and really busy shopping streets. St. Columba's had 2 halls that were heavily used, plus the group therapy center, which is now NHS commissioned, all together hosting over 1,000 people a week. The St. Columba's worship area, though, was used only on Sundays and for occasional funerals and concerts. It's quite a striking place and little known. So our brief was simple, just update the site for 2050. For worship, we needed this flexible, subdividable sanctuary with a welcoming entrance and including disabled access. For music and concerts, we needed a new digital organ, and we needed to be able to move the grand piano to and from center stage. We needed a catering kitchen for coffee hours and meals, plus a welcoming reception base capable of overseeing the entire site. For community use, we needed small meeting rooms clustered around an open hub, and this between these two larger meeting spaces. And everything is to have state-of-the-art audiovisual. So we hope to welcome many for coffee in the hub and to offer maybe soft toy refreshments for tired shoppers, as well as our nightlight restorative hospitality till the early hours for young people who have overindulged. Sustainability was another goal right from the start. Because much of the halls and roof have been rebuilt, we've been able to add insulation, low energy windows and doors, as well as roof lights to provide daylight, solar screening, and ventilation in the hot weather. The church roof is being insulated by blowing recycled cellulose into the ceiling void. The church windows will have secondary glazing, both to conserve energy and to block traffic noise. All the lights will be low energy LEDs. Our electricity and gas will be 100% renewable. And we now have 5.4 kilowatt peak of solar panels with wiring and space to install a battery to power our busy evenings. So, flexible worship, welcoming spaces for church and community, and a sustainable future. Thanks.
Thanks, Margaret. And so what I'm going to do now, hi, I'm Jack, by the way. I'm one of the architects from Archangel and running the job on site. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of what we had to start with and then hopefully show you how we were able to meet Margaret's brief and the church's brief in what we're doing. So this is the site, and one thing you can see is that it's there's a lot of it behind the street, the main elevation of the street, which causes some of the problems to do with making the building as open and accessible to as many people as possible. And as Margaret described, there's a main worship space, and then the St. Columba Hall and the Gibson Hall. Those are the three key areas of this building. I'm just going to give you a quick tour around them as they were. So here's the main view from Downing Street. I'm standing, taking this photo in the John Lewis bus stop. This is then coming around the corner to where we're going to be creating our new entrance. This is the view from Downing Place. The building is not listed. It was constructed in 1890, but it does sit within the Cambridge City Historic Core Conservation Area. And we had a positive engagement with a pre-application planning process on this one and ongoing consultation with the conservation officer throughout the job so far. We're going to move into the main worship space. As Margaret says, it has a lovely character of its own, and you know, that's as retained as we're able to do so and what we're changing, and we'll show you, come on to that later. And as Margaret said, it's hosts church services, Sundays, midweek, but also funerals, weddings, and some children activities and student groups. That's how this space is used. But some of the features of the space do get in the way of that being used most efficiently. One of those things being pews, which is something that we come across a lot in our work with churches. The main worship space also have some smaller side chapels. These are used for smaller prayer meetings. And as Margaret said, the Nightlight Service, which runs out of there, yes, which cater to people who have been in the pubs and clubs, had a few too many to drink, and then they're offered a space to come and sober up and be given some care, whether that be ordering a taxi or you know, just someone to talk to. This space also at the moment, or did, host some anonymous groups as well, counselling groups. And then just looking into the corner of the church, and this sort of highlights one of the main issues that we were trying to trying to address in the scheme is the connection between the worship space and the rest of the halls, which was only through that small door there and a small corridor around the back of the organ, and you'll see later on how we've tried to address that link. So onto the St Columba Hall. This building was a later addition. It has a large hall, WC offices, and it also has a Caretakers Flat, you can see on the bottom right. So that's nearest the road and the noisier part of the site, which is again something that we looked to address in the scheme. That's just a view of the Caretakers residence entrance. This is the view inside the St Columba's Hall, and this is used for a variety of things: dance classes, ballet, contemporary dance, yoga classes, martial arts group, and also an Islamic Student Society uses the space for events as well. And then this is another view just looking back towards the main street. And one of the key problems, and I think this photo highlights it, is that this building was a rabbit warren. It really was difficult to navigate around to know where you were at any given point, and that's another item that we wanted to address with the proposal. Just through the doors on the left is a small conservatory that sits within a courtyard, which was used for some more anonymous groups, Alcoholics Anonymous being one of many that took place out of that room. And then the third element of the building is the Gibson Hall, which sits sort of in the deepest part of the plan away from the street. And it's another large open space. Again, dance classes were happening in here: ballet, tap, swing dance, also a Tai Chi club running out of there. And then also this was used for a monthly lunch club that the church does, providing meals from the adjacent kitchen for a wide variety of people. And then this is looking back towards the main part of the building. And at first floor, we'll come to it in a minute, there are some further rooms. And then this is just a view into the kitchen, just to give you an idea of what there is, but hopefully the before and after that I'll come to next shows how we've opened up this space. And then, as I said earlier, here's the conservatory and the courtyard space that is adjacent to the Gibson Hall. That will become a key point in our scheme. And just briefly to mention, at first floor above the Gibson Hall, there's also a suite of meeting rooms and offices. And this is for a therapy centre that Margaret mentioned that runs out of there. So that was something that was important to be retained in our proposal. So yeah, some of the key aims for the building, as we now come to look at the proposal, we've got 3 examples of change. The first one is that the worshipping community are outward facing in their approach. They want to be inclusive and do have a very good history of doing that in the activities that they run. But their buildings, as you've hopefully seen, are inward looking. They only have 2 elevations onto the street, and so it's very difficult for people to know what's going on inside the building. So that's one of the things that we wanted to change, is to make the buildings more outward looking. Second thing that we wanted to change was the interconnection of spaces. There's a separation in the plan that hopefully you've been able to see between the worship space in the bottom left and the hub and the Gibson Hall, St Columba Hall spaces. That's where a lot of activity is happening, but the physical connection between the two was very difficult, and that sort of goes against the church's aims of being welcoming to everyone that comes into their building. It seems like there was a divide between the worship space and everything else. And then the third thing that we wanted to address was providing a better suite of spaces to suit the activities that happen within them. They felt that they had too many large spaces and could do with a suite of rooms that were smaller, that could cater for a greater number of smaller meeting rooms. So the additions that we've made will come through the scheme now. This is a proposed plan on the left and a demolition plan where you can see that most of the St Columba Hall and Gibson Hall has been reconfigured, and then I'll go through the changes to the rest of the building now. And we're going to do that through the use of our 3D model. We model everything in 3D through BIM software called ArchiCAD, and we do that from the outset of the design stage to help with the coordination of all the design stages. So we're going to go through our 3D model now. So firstly, the changes that we've made in the worship space. This is the view from Downing Place. And one of the important things that we did here was we're adding in some windows underneath the existing large ones. So the idea of those is it provides direct view from the street into what's going on inside, adding to that sense of the church being open and welcoming to all. And then also on the left-hand side of this image, you may not be able to see it in great detail, but we're creating a shop window, so moving some existing doors slightly further back to create space for a TV screen that can advertise events that are going on in the church. Another key change that we're making is the providing a new entrance. So you can see a before and after here. We're creating a new entrance into what was the chapel space. And the idea here, again, is to provide a welcoming space that's light, open, and enables people to see in to what's going on in the building. This is a view from the chapel space, which now becomes that welcoming entrance. Within the church, I think Margaret's covered what the church wanted to do here. They wanted to make it fit for contemporary use, flexible contemporary use. So full upgrade of the AV and lighting system, and just simple decorations. We didn't want to detract from the character of the space. Although you will see some roof lights at high level there, and we'll come on to those later, but that's another key change in this space. We also, in terms of providing visible activity within the church, we have put in a room across the back of the main worship space, which is divisible by a movable glass partition, which you can see sort of stacked on the left-hand side of this image, and reusing some of the existing timber screens in front to retain some of the character of the existing building. And the idea behind that is that we bring visible activity right up to those new windows on the Downing Street elevation. And then, yeah, looking at the connection between the worship space and everything else. We removed the organ and did some structural alterations to take away a corner of the building to then allow a better flow between the worship space. And then now this is into what was the St. Columba Hall. So now looking at the St. Columba Hall, which has been retermed the hub. This is where we've done the most additional works and the most alterations, is the addition of a mezzanine floor into the hub, into the St. Columba space to create the hub, and then a reconfiguring of where functions happen on the plan. So what was the Caretakers Flat it now becomes a suite of toilets and the main circulation route, stairs and lift for the building. So that becomes the entrance to the hub. That's just the same 3D view showing the divisions of meeting rooms. And then this is the before and after of the hub, so showing that we've added meeting rooms at ground floor. You can see them on the left of the plan, and office spaces, and then an open plan hub space that will be used for tea and coffee after the service, but also as just a meeting point for anyone coming into the various uses of the building. Another view looking back, again, of before and after. And again, opening up of the corridor spaces. Again, the conservatory on the top left, or that corridor that we had, we've taken that down, and actually this is the only part of extension on the project, just extending slightly further out to better address the courtyard and demolition of that conservatory building as well. And as you can see, throughout the scheme, lots of use of height, natural light, roof lights throughout the scheme. And then the Gibson Hall, really just a refreshing of what's there, making it suitable for 21st century use, and some additional storage on the left, and replacement of the existing roof lights with modern semi-automated roof lights there with rain sensors and things as well. And then looking back towards the end of the Gibson Hall, you can see how we've actually pushed the kitchen back in the plan, which enables the kitchen to serve into both the hub and the Gibson Hall, which was one of the key changes in this, and involved a lot of structural changes. And that's highlighted by this before and after in the kitchen. Where we were in the kitchen, we've now actually extended the Gibson Hall space to make that more usable, but then, as I said, make the kitchen serve into 2 different spaces. And then just looking at the courtyard, which used to have the conservatory in it, and as I said, one of the key aims is to create a better connection between the hub space and that courtyard. And I won't dwell, that image isn't very good. I won't dwell too long on the first floor, but we've added a suite of meeting rooms to that mezzanine, and also relocated the therapy centre to the front end of the site. And that sort of gives you an overview of the changes that we've made, and we'll go through some of the other design features as I now hand over to Coulson's to sort of talk us through the build process. And one of the key reasons that we engaged with Coulson's, and we actually engaged with them in a negotiated contract from a relatively early stage, was driven by the timescales of the sale of Emmanuel to Pembroke. So we felt that a negotiated contract was a good route, because it gave us a sort of dependable delivery, and we got the contractor's expertise within the design stage. As we were developing the technical design for tender, we were getting input from the contractor to sort of help with buildability, which I hope has improved the build process for us and for Coulson's. So yeah, that's it from me. I will hand over to Tom and Stuart.
Thanks for that, Jack. So we'll now go through the build process. So we just start with this aerial shot again, just to remind everyone of the issues we have with working in central Cambridge. The first being having 7 neighbouring businesses, which are the Language School, both the Spoons, All Bar One, Wagamama's, the Varsity, Nando's, and Vodka Revs. With it being in central Cambridge, land is a premium. The church have very good previous experiences working with the neighbours and being very accommodating, so we were able to negotiate with Downing Place College to have a delivery compound set up, and the boxes just appeared like so, which has eased us taking deliveries and moving materials into site. During the works, we've made sure we keep talking to our neighbours with a public liaison officer. So the photo on the left is the delivery compound. Within Downing College, there's a very sensitive machine the other side of the wall that picks up on vibration and noise, so we put the Harris acoustic panels around there to ease the pressure on that. To the right, we have our project notice board, which just allows everybody who's walking past to know what's going on inside the church and what any disruption would be caused. Being at the top of the road as well, we're obviously going to be blocking the road quite a bit to take the deliveries, so we set up a delivery schedule where we liaise with our neighbouring businesses, and it also allowed anyone who needed to pass down there the ability to know when we're likely to have a delivery truck blocking the road, so they can plan their journeys around it. As well as getting materials into site, getting materials out of the site is also a bit of a headache. We had a little compound area, which was made even smaller by putting a scaffold in there as well. We had to go out to several different skip companies to finally find one out of the truck small enough to back a lorry in there. As you can see, Cambridge Recycling was successful with this one. But what we did have is an abundance of internal space, so we were able to use the hall, that's St Columba's Hall there, to do site segregation, and so all the waste was sent out in the appropriate skip. Next slide. Excellent. Welfare was also, we had to rethink how we were going to deliver that with not much external space, so we decided we would use the inside of the church. The existing dais proved a good location. As you can see on the photo on the right, we had constructed a timber frame hut which had the canteen, a meeting room and the site manager's office, which also had an external door, so then everyone can safely enter site without having to go through the building itself.
Thank you, Stuart. Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Tom from Colson speaking. In addition to what everybody said there, is the issues of getting people in and around the site. Clearly, we're exposed on two sides to public highways. We chose to register the contract with the local scheme, the Considerate Contractor scheme based in Cambridge. We work well with these guys. We've worked with them in the past and have a one-to-one relationship with Mr. Nick Kendall within there. That gives us the opportunity to pull on that local knowledge and assist us in agreeing and maintaining footpath closures, delivery routes to and from the site. All of which we of course take on and agree through highways. You can see here through the photograph attached, there will be footpath closures when we work around the perimeter of the building. Those are in agreement with the relevant authorities. Thank you.
So we just have a snapshot here of our scaffold schedule for the job. One of the main areas was putting a temporary roof over the hub, which would allow us to continue works during the winter months. The orange box highlights where the temporary roof was required, but the tricky part with all the neighbouring businesses is finding ground to touch down on, and the arrows that have just appeared highlight where we were able to ground the temporary roof. The pitch of the temporary roof was quite key as well, as we didn't have much land to land on, so we had to make sure that the guttering was put on appropriately to land on our land and not on neighbouring properties. And then that would allow us to subsequently strip the roof and carry out all the thermal improvements required. Yeah, next slide.
Okay, following the erection of the temporary roof, that allows us to actually progress the project. Clearly, on most projects, you start at the top and work your way down. This one is no change there. So one of the first things we did is strip the roof to the Gibson Columba Hall. You can see here the roof is stripped back to its bare bones, nothing but a sarcing board and rafter left. That gave us access to removal of the existing roof lights, which have been replaced with modern ones. 28 roof lights in total installed across the scheme. Removing the existing roof coverings, like you can see here, gives us the ability to improve thermal efficiencies of the building. Margaret's touched on that earlier, so you'll see through later photographs what we've done ensuring we meet that client brief.
This is back to me. This is just highlighting that we had various different roof constructions found, and in one case slightly unexpected. So we had to have a very specific strategy for each type of roof. Some of them needed ventilation, some of them didn't. But in everything that we were trying to achieve, we were looking to go 10% beyond the thermal improvement required by building regs, required by Part L for working with existing buildings. So yeah, this was just highlighting that each roof was treated slightly differently to ensure that we got the best thermal performance possible. And while we're at it, we also, while we were doing works to the roofs, as Tom said, introducing roof lights throughout, and also taking the opportunity to install PVs along the St. Columba roof. And yeah, just following on, sort of this slide just is highlighting the strategies that we took. So part of the reason for putting in so many roof lights was not only natural light, but also natural ventilation. So each of the roofs has each of the roof lights, has rain and CO2 sensors, so they can close automatically when either condition triggers it, but in the main they can be let open to night purge of heat that's built up throughout the day, which was a problem that the client had experienced in the past. So that's the strategy throughout the building.
Thank you, Jack. As we suggested earlier, here we can see the same roof that we previously witnessed stripped. It's now well underway through and being improved. The roof lights you can see positioned here. Note the positioning of them. Two of them had to be raised slightly to allow flashings on those to be considered when abutting existing roofs. This is the type of detail that unfolds as we deliver these refurbishment projects. You can witness again here the insulation cut between rafter and then another over, all held down with a counter batting. And again, in the top right photograph there, you can see how Colson's have worked sympathetically with the building. There's areas of existing lime plaster lath retained there. This is all done in an attempt to ensure that the building is respected and we don't just go in there and take the thing apart, as it were. Thank you. As we rebuild these roofs and include the thermal efficiencies, very often that suggests an increase in height. Clearly, if we take things up, existing structures end up being compromised slightly. So here we can witness an extension to rafter feet through the sprocket, a slightly deeper fascia that allows us to incorporate that insulation build-up seamlessly, really, and respects the architectural intent. So that allows us to do what we've got to do. In addition to that, when working again with these old and historic buildings, there's many abutments that we come across that need some serious consideration. What we're looking at here is a reworked version of the same through Colson's. This particular gutter created no end of problems for the end user prior our attendance through regular overflowing and very difficult to maintain. Access really is quite difficult here. So we removed the gutter in its entirety, reformed it, being compliant through lead code in steps and so on, increased the layboard up the roof to mitigate the overflow, and we've incorporated an overflow system within that gutter, so the site will get witness of a potential block in the main gutter prior water penetration into the hall.
This is the picture taken only a couple of weeks ago, showing a temporary roof that's now been struck, and obviously we're left with the solar panels, all the roof lights, the new slated roof, and the merge of some recently installed flat roofs as well. Yep.
Once a roof is completed and stripped, we take some of the load off the building. Once we've stripped the roof, that allows us to consider the many structural alterations that are needed. Jack put up a plan earlier on with several areas of red within it. All of that is demolition. And what we're starting to see here is the progression of the demolition through the scheme. Several high-level windows have been opened up. You can see 3 to the right of this photograph. They were high-level windows. We've basically removed them, made them slightly wider through large metal steelworks, and then opened them up in their entirety to get that natural light back into the building. Back in the far left-hand side, you can see another pair of stills there. That's an entire corner removal, which does take an element of skill, that's for sure. On to the next one, Jack. Here, oh, sorry, Stu.
Yeah, this just highlights the other end of the hub hall, really, as we're about to open up the first floor structure to connect the therapy area and the new lift into what will be the hub zone. Yep, next slide. And then this is in the Gibson Hall. This was a bit of a complex rework, really, for raising the floor. We had to do a cantilever mesh structure in this section, as there was a basement beneath where, if we were to put normal foundations in, it would be quite large, which would mean digging a 2.3 metre deep hole in the existing building was quite challenging. As a result, we supported the wall off the existing basement wall there, to save us having to do any extra foundations. The basement beneath houses some of the plants that is around the building to make heating and cooling work. Next slide.
Here again, more steelwork. There is plenty in this particular project. What we're looking at here is the progression of the MES structure within the Columbus Hall. Interestingly, this structure is completely independent, with some strategically placed columns that are later concealed within walling, foundations underneath breaking through the existing structure onto a pad foundation, and then a simple timber joist infill between. All this work was done with the use of mutes, so there was no risk of fall. Everything was erected and the timber joists were installed using mobile elevated working platforms, as it were. To the right, you can see a nice photo there illustrating quite nicely Jack's 3D model. And this 3D model really has been very useful, certainly at site level for the site managers. They're able to witness and appreciate the intent, which is often very difficult when you're looking at things 2D in a large open space. So that 3D model for us here at Colson's, we can't praise enough. It really has been very, very useful.
So the next area is, this is the Caretakers Flat, and to create the plant area for the ventilation, which you can see on the right, it meant we had to lower the existing roof, and this in turn created us with the existing parapet wall. We're a bit worried about the steadiness of that whilst we took the roof out, and it being unsupported roof structure. So in turn, we decided we would install the new roof first. As you can see, the joists have gone in there, and then we put the ply deck on, which in turn acted as a bit of a crash deck, as well as keeping the site nice and secure and the elements out whilst we took the roof off.
And so, yeah, as Stuart mentioned, lots of plant placed on a flat roof, and we then had to, well, at design stage, work out how to feed that plant throughout the building, and we've basically identified a longitudinal route all the way along the spine of the building at 2 levels. Here, this is showing ventilation coming in from, on the image on the left, coming in from the flat roof behind us, going through at high level onto the image on the right, carrying on at high level above the first floor meeting rooms, and branching off, as you can slightly see, to the right hand side, and then from there dropping down through the first floor meeting rooms to get to the ground floor meeting rooms. And again, this was something that we worked on at design stage, making use of the BIM model with our services engineer to identify those routes to service the building. And this is another slide that represents the same, really. You can see in red the basement area that Stuart was talking about, which is then feeds the rest of the building through a riser identified in blue, and then the pink and the green, it basically shows the service routes that we've taken. And you can see going all the way along the spine of the building, and that spine runs at both, in the images on the left, both at first floor ceiling level and at second floor ceiling level. Which brings us on to yeah, where we are in the hub now.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you, Jack. What we're witnessing here is exactly one of these primary service routes. This one runs really front to back of the building, and you can see the high level containment for electric, data, AV, fire alarm. Side on the left, we have various CT circuits in flow and return on heating and mains code water. Again, using the 3D model, we're able to identify clashes, potential clashes, and predetermine routes through any walling to ensure efficient use of fire protection and such like through these walls. We can effectively form the openings before the services arrive. So again, a very useful tool.
Next one, Jack. So we've just jumped straight up above to the first floor now, where we can see the meeting rooms that are being starting to be built. And these walls are acoustic walls, and they also run slightly higher than what the ceiling will be, so they mask the ventilation ducts that run across, while still maintaining the nice structure of the existing roof. We can see also in this photo how the light is going to work and making a nice light, airy space for between the ground and first floor areas. And what we also wanted to pick on is the existing ties. On the right hand side within the Queen Truss, you can see there's sort of like a light grey scar. That's where the tie used to run. So as you can see, that would have been right in the way of the walkways and the meeting rooms. So we've actually lowered this tie down now, used the existing steel, the new steel frame structure we put in, connecting to the existing piers we've now formed.
This is over to me, just slightly conscious of time, might do this quite quickly. Basically, where we've relocated the Caretakers Flat at first floor, acoustic insulation became very important, and this section shows the relationship of the Gibson Hall and other rooms in red to the Caretakers Flat in blue. And we used what we refer to throughout as a top hat system installed on the joists to mitigate transfer of sound between the two spaces. guess, over to, I think it's Tom.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
So as Jack has suggested there, we can witness the progression of the acoustic floor, and clearly the acoustic flooring is quite important when we're working above a commercial space. So a gyprock silent floor system was specified. What we're witnessing here is one of those in progression. The top hat system sits on a neoprene gasket, so allows segregation between the structure itself. We then use an acoustic plasterboard, which is cut into the support of the top hat, and then a way-rock flooring is simply laid over. None of this is screwed down through the joist, so it all effectively floats on top of the existing structure to help break that passage of sound. In addition to that, picking up on the thermal efficiencies that Margaret is requested through the brief, you can see again in the domestic part of the building, we've improved the thermal efficiencies of the building with the wall boarding you can witness on the right-hand side. Next, we come over to probably the tightest area of the project. This is the lift and stairwell. It's within the central core of the building, the circulation area, if you like. It really is very, very tight, working with the restraints of an existing building, having to get some compliant requirements in. Stairs have to be a minimum width to service a certain amount of people. Likewise with the lift. They set those restraints. We have to work with them. The stair and the lift was particularly challenging on this one. But I believe we're there. You can see here now the lift passing up into the first floor. Thank you, Jack. Next slide. Here you see the work that was needed to allow that lift and stair installation. The whole corner of the building has been removed. A labyrinth of steel has been installed, all designed and signed off through Coulson's, working again with that 3D model in Jack. So yeah, very successful again. Thank you.
So now we move into the church space, and this is quite a nice drone shot just to emphasise the sheer mass and volume of the church itself. As Margaret touched on though, we'd like a nice flexible performance space, so AV improvements, lighting, a full redecoration as well as new roof lights have been installed in this area. Next slide. We float down a little bit and we get to see a nice aerial shot of how we're using the church space and storing materials. Interestingly, all the bricks that were removed for forming windows and doorways were actually reincorporated back into the building itself. Next slide.
You've got 5 minutes, guys.
We're now just going to touch on a few areas of improvements within the church itself. So we've installed lots of floor containment to allow surfaces to pass around the church. Interestingly, this containment only needs a 70mm deep trench, and it's 3 compartmental segregation with that. Next slide, Jack. The next slide now just highlights the secondary glazing that we've got to install within the church, and it sort of gives you a good idea of how large some of the windows are and the task we have getting these raised and installed in place. And as Margaret touched on, it improves the acoustics as well as the thermal performance of the church, and they're going to be finished in bronze to respect the stone in that area. Next slide.
Here we can see the progression of the nightlight zone. Jack was referring earlier on, giving the opportunity for individuals to enter the building later in the evening after a drink or two. So what we're looking at here is a steel structure in its early days, and then the formation of partition walling within to create T-zones, WCs, and chair stores and such. Also, we see the white powder-coated bar across the top. That's effectively the runner for the sliding partition. It will be installed. Next, this is the window installation on Downing Street itself. Clearly, Downing Street is very, very busy. Buses, contraflow, cycleways, many pedestrians. We were tasked with getting 2 large windows in this open or in this elevation. The usual way of forming opens is quite simple, needle and propping. That opportunity wasn't really available to us here because that would have negated any use of the footpath beyond. So we come up with this needleless propping solution, which is basically 3 steel boxes, one slightly smaller than the next. Cut a hole in the first 225mm of wall, install the steel, grout around. Cut a smaller hole within, insert the next box, repeat until you get down to the window size you need. Very, very effective. Now the stonemasons just need to come in and form the opening on the outside. So the amount of time we're out on the pavement has been seriously reduced. Next slide, thank you, Jack. We've also had to consider the piano lift, as Margaret suggested earlier on. The piano sits in the main sanctuary space the majority of the time. On occasion, it is needed on the dais. Grand piano is quite a hefty bit of kit, not the easiest thing to lift up 368 mil of raised floor. So what you can see here is the formation of the pit required to facilitate the piano lift, and a drawing confirming how this thing will be installed. That will quite simply allow the piano to be slid onto a deck, which will be finished identical to the floor, and then through operation that lift will raise it to the dais height, allowing 2-3 individuals just to maneuver the piano into the center of the dais. Thank you, Jack.
To allow us to safely complete the works within the church, we've worked with our scaffolders to design a scaffolding run around the perimeter, allowing us still to have the internal floor space. And then we did ladder beams across the top to create a platform to work within the high-level roof space. This will allow us obviously to do all the electrics, AV and full decorations, as well as the roof lights and blown insulation. Next slide. Just a couple of photos here, really to see the craftsmanship from 1890. As you can see, they used trees to support the roof back then. Large, very large timbers up there. Next slide.
I think this is back to me just to sort of summarise where we're going with the main worship space and the key environmental things that we wanted to achieve. And it's actually a reflection of what we're doing throughout the project. So insulating the roofs to give it a nice, put a nice warm hat on the building. We've actually also been doing some damp proofing works to the walls, which we didn't mention, but we've done throughout as well. So that's getting nice dry boots. So dry boots, warm hat to keep everyone safe and dry. Really important focus on providing natural light, providing ventilation through roof lights, providing secondary glazing, or in some cases in the rest of the building, we're providing new windows, triple glazed in some cases, and then also the addition of PV panels. The blown insulation to the roof in the image on the right has gone in. That's gone into the void space in the loft, and yeah, that's a new one for us, and something that we think is going to make a big difference in this space, and it shows what is possible with a historic building. So that, I think, brings us to the end of where we are. The next phase of work is to open up the new entrance, and there's a real effort here to retain as much existing stonework as possible, and wary that we're running out of time, I think that I will say thank you very much. And are there any questions?
Super, everyone. Well, that's a fantastic tour there. I mean, the construction photos, I should say, are absolutely fantastic for our CFCI members to see how all of this stuff goes together. And it's great to see Coulson's giving us a real insight into how some of the ideas that the architect and the team have come to life. I should probably start by saying the challenges of working with an existing building are obviously evident from your talk, and I guess from a climate emergency point of view, you know, we do have to reuse buildings. It just so happens in this instance that I guess there was no other option really in that respect in terms of conservation, but it does show us that how inventive you can be with existing buildings, and perhaps we should all challenge ourselves to question ourselves in terms of the demolition case. But anyway, that's enough of a plea from the CFCI chairman. So if I can just start directing a few questions to our panelists. So it's great to see the 3D modeling of the building, and I guess I've got two questions around that use of 3D. The first question, I guess, is for Jack and for Margaret. Is how I guess how the 3D model helped the client briefing process, and allowing others from the congregation and the client group to understand what was being proposed and fully comprehend how that was embraced. So why don't we answer that one first, Jack, Margaret, or Dirk? Or
I'll start. I'll just say, when we had the big vote to confirm that we wanted to go ahead and agree the funding, we showed Jack's model with a walkthrough, Apos and Jack, and people were amazed. And it just was completely clear to people what this huge challenge was and how exciting it was going to be. And so I you know, right the way through in meetings, we've discussed where the furniture is going to go, what it looks like as you come in, and where the AV panels are going to be. It's absolutely invaluable. And I'm a hearty congratulations to Jack. I mean, and Apos. It was really great.
I think something to add on in terms of what we're able to offer is this model's viewable on, as you may be able to tell, on mobile devices. So I'm just running this off an iPad, so it's possible to look at it on site, and we've been able to share it with Coulson's. But we can also export it to a basic VR software as well. It's the Google Cardboard one, and we did do a session with some of the client group as well, you know, with a VR headset and standing in the space and looking around as to what's there. It's difficult to show that to you in a webinar, but it does have that functionality as well. So I found that.
Just say, in building group meetings, we have run the models too to make other decisions. It really is right through the whole job, very useful.
As I say, I think it's a super example here of how as a construction industry we can perhaps broaden our reach, if that makes sense, you know, bigger picture in terms of making people understand what it is we do, and the vision that it's involved. Thank you both for that. So I guess my next question is for the Coulson group, so Tom and Stuart. I mean, as I said at the beginning, the construction photos, really great for us to see those, and I love the what was that quote, the needleless propping. I mean, I guess nobody else really understands what you mean by that, but it's a great word. The strategy here for the construction access, you mentioned earlier on that there was a sensitive bit of equipment next door in Downing College, if that's right, or I guess the
geology department.
The geology department. So I guess the question is did you upset them with vibration and noise, or did you did you manage to achieve the considerate contractor points there?
Well, the project as a whole, we've not had any single complaints really. We set up a project-specific email account, so and it was on the notes for anyone passing by or maybe if you have any issues, there's several of us monitoring that. It's empty, so that can only be good news.
Excellent. I guess with 7 neighbours, I'm surprised you haven't got any complaints. Is there still time yet to get some or not? I shouldn't say that, should I?
There is there's always still time, Simon, but I mean the public liaison officer we've appointed to the project is regularly communicating with the neighbouring properties, so we can fend off any issues before they come a reality, if you like. And in addition to that, it allows us to advise neighbouring properties where we are and what we're about to do. So the risk of offence is taken away before the chance is there.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you, everyone. I guess a little bit back now, a question here on going back to the 3D model. The question about how was that produced? Did you do a 3D point cloud survey, or was it all measured from Jack and Apost and Dirk going around making their own measurements? What did you do there? How did you create that?
Apost, do you want to take this one? Everyone's heard enough.
Yes. Yes. So it was a fairly traditional route, I would guess. The building was surveyed by a surveyor who got a 2D plans, sectioned elevations, and we use that to model it with the standard tools that are provided within a CAD software, like walls, slabs, columns, all of those things. We get the opportunity through ArchiCAD to define which elements are retained, demolished, and which are new, which gives you flexibility to check how the design affects the building and where you need to incorporate something to it or not. But it's a fairly simple model building process. The helpful item with it is that once items are in, the production of schedules like furniture schedules or sanitary ware or room finish data sheets is fairly straightforward and streamlined. So slight change can then easily be reflected to any documentation that goes out, which eliminates, mitigates a bit of risk in communicating changes.
Thank you, Apas. Question here, I think, for Margaret. Was there a tension between the need to remodel spaces to achieve flexibility against the loss of I guess, a sacred side chapel, which now becomes an entrance? I mean, how did you go about making those difficult decisions?
For the entrance, it was actually in a meeting, and we had a lot of very open, creative meetings. One of the members said, what about coming in through the old chapel? Surely that's the obvious place because it's quieter on Downing Place. So that was not a problem. The pews and all of the carved wood screens, I mean, we're talking about two different congregations. Everybody has an opinion, and we just simply left it and gave people a lot of time to think and use the 3D model to see what could be. And then when we had a vote, it turned out that people were prepared to change things.
Okay.
We didn't know until really last spring that would happen. But it's important to take the clients with you, and I think it's fair to say that Archangel's done that, coming and talking and explaining things, and give people time to see the vision, which 3D helps.
Super, thank you, Margaret. That's very good. So we've probably got time for one more question before we have to close. So someone's explaining about or asking about the central heating pipework and how the building is heated. I mean, Jack very eloquently talked about putting a warm hat on and keeping dry boots. I like that. I'm going to remember that phrase. But I guess the options in terms of heating, I mean, you still need to heat the place. It's an existing 17th century building, by the 18th century building, 17th century.
19th century, it's 1890. Oh,
1890, sorry. I guess heating it, you still need to use some pretty conventional methods, don't you? So I guess is there a gas boiler? I mean, you haven't really got much opportunity to do much more, have you?
There is a gas boiler. There is a plant room, as Stuart was identifying in the Gibson Hall. It's a basement down there.
Yeah.
There is a gas boiler in there, but of course they are modern and incredibly efficient, and condensed boilers, etc. So they will be efficient. And in addition to that, the thermal improvements of the building means the water is running less. There is PV on the roof that will assist with power. You haven't really got much choice as far as heating a building like this. Traditional means.
I guess we're seeing the electrification, aren't we, of our power in the UK, but I mean, I think we've got to respect that at the moment there are some challenges there, and it will be a while before we get. Sorry, Margaret, you were going to say something.
From a sustainable point of view, we did hope it might be possible to use heat pump technology. We had no space for boreholes, or and it was going to be a problem with noise with all those neighbors, and so we do have cooling cassettes which do produce these. We have got heat pumps in terms of cooling that's available for really hot weather when there are a lot of people. But that's all we've had to use, gas condensing boilers.
I also want to add that we had really long discussions about whether it would be possible to use air source heat pumps, for example, or any other less emissive mode of heating. It's always an issue. It was an issue with noise. It was an issue with heat being expelled out of the units and getting back into the building through the ventilation.
Yeah.
It was very difficult to accommodate that in this case.
And we weren't able to, for instance, lift the floors and put in underfloor heating, or the amount of thermal insulation was good, but couldn't be enormous given the constraints of planning and the existing building structure.
Sorry about that. The doorbell rings, doesn't it, when you're when you're in the middle of things. I think everybody, that's fantastic. We're 2 o'clock now, so I'm afraid I'm going to have to wrap this up. But to all of you here today, to Margaret, thank you very much for being involved in the presentation today, and a very aspirational project. And to the team at Archangel, fantastic work. I love the work you've done with the 3D modelling, and the aspiration you've had with the building is fantastic. And to Coulson, just some very, very diligent work on site. Really all very commendable. I suppose it leaves it to me now to just sort of wrap up with a few final parish notices about the CFCI. I think in 3 weeks we're hoping to host another webinar, hopefully on another site visit to Cambridge Nuclear Bunker, which sounds an interesting project. And then the week after that we hope to have Urban Splash, or a presentation on the current changes to planning that we have in the UK. So keep an eye on the emails. But once again, thank you very much, everybody, for your time today, our audience, but in particular our speakers. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Simon.